All right, everyone. So, good morning. What I thought we'd do this morning, because I just thought it would help us with our own learning process, review process, is to look at the major systems of the body. And I'm not planning to do it in a lot of detail. And you've got a nice little handout that you can refer to. However, I thought we'd kind of go through this handout and just, again, check into these various body systems and correlate them to the planetary rulerships. And that way we can learn to think of the endocrine system with Neptune and its various co-rulers. You know, the circulatory system with the Sun and Uranus, and then getting Venus and Mars in there a little bit. So you start to, again, get familiarized with how all of these planets have co-rulerships, connecting rulerships, all this interaction on this physiological level with the body systems, just like we would look at a chart, from a metaphysical level with the Pluto formula, and everything relates to everything else. All right. So you will find this as your second to last section that I actually called Body Systems. The source for this is a very nice little graphic visual on the body systems. And as a matter of fact, I was going to bring in my little visual. I'll go get that at break, so if any of you want to look at it, you can. The only thing that's not in this body system is the endocrine system. And so we're going to do that one first. So we'll just do a little bit of a review. But an overview is that the nervous system and the endocrine system interrelate to each other quite intimately. The nervous system, which is ruled by Uranus, co-ruled by Mercury and Jupiter also in my eyes, sends all the messages out to the endocrine system. And it does that through the hypothalamus. But the endocrine system is the main ruler of the endocrine system is Neptune. And so this endocrine system has many co-rulers specific to the individual glands. Now, the endocrine system is a collection of glands that produces hormones which are necessary for all the bodily functions. In other words, the hormones are the regulators of all the body systems. They keep homeostasis. Is that the word? Homeostasis? Am I pronouncing that correctly, Third House? Okay. They also control all the cycles of the body. The circadian rhythms that tell us when to wake up, when to sleep, the ovulation rhythms, the growth rhythms, all the different various cycles of the body, whether they happen from a few moments to a lifetime. All of those rhythms are controlled by the hormones that are secreted from the glands of the endocrine system. And so these glands, again, they work like messengers, similar to the nervous system. But they specific hormones will go to specific target shells with specific receptors. and therefore the hormones don't get mixed up, in the wrong receptor cell. Specific relationships to create a specific process. Now I've kind of lined up this endocrine system according to the chakras, just so that you can see this a little bit. In the brain, which is the medulla ajna chakra in the eastern system, which is the sun and the moon. In the brain, we have the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the pineal. And again, as we've talked, the hypothalamus, which is ruled by Uranus and the moon, the hypothalamus receives chemical messages from the brain itself. This is how this endocrine system starts to relate between the nervous system and the endocrine system. The hypothalamus receives messages from the brain itself. And then let me refer to my notes so I don't forget anything. These hypothalamus secretes then, again, chemicals, hormones, that speak to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland governs growth and decay. And this is co-ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. And so it's the hypothalamus that'll tell the pituitary when it's time to reach out to puberty. Again, those different various cycles. The pituitary is known as the master gland. It makes hormones which control many other endocrine glands in the body. For instance, again, the pituitary controls the emotions, changes of the seasons, the light and the dark. Just to give you an idea. Now remember, the hypothalamus and the pituitary were at the base of the brain in the central part of the head, in the back, or back, the central part. And the pituitary is right underneath the hypothalamus. Don't know how large the hypothalamus is, but the pituitary is about the size of a pea. And the pituitary has a front lobe and a back lobe. And so for me, all this is going to relate to, Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune to a certain extent, but I'll just give you some idea of what the pituitary does. The front lobe, or the anterior lobe, regulates activities through the thyroid, the adrenals, and the reproductive glands.
The front lobe of the...
Pituitary.
Oh, okay.
Front lobe of the pituitary.
Thyroid, adrenals.
Thyroid, adrenals, and reproductive glands, or the gonads. For instance, the front or anterior lobe of the pituitary regulates growth hormone for the bones, tissues, minerals, etc. The anterior lobe also is responsible for prolactin, which is the milk that women produce when they have babies. So if somebody has a hard time nursing, you could possibly look to Jupiter or Saturn, co-rulers of this pituitary gland, as well as, again, the Venus and Mars. But you can start to see all this interrelationship that goes on. And it stimulates the thyroid. The pituitary gland has a role in stimulating the thyroid, which is ruled by Mercury and Uranus to a certain extent. Uranus does a lot of work in the body. Now the back lobe, or the posterior lobe, it regulates water in the body, acts as an antidiuretic. It's also responsible for contractions when women go into labor. So it's just to give you a glance at this pituitary gland that is co-ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. That's why they call it the master gland of the body. That's why it does so much stuff, and it controls many other glands in the endocrine system. And again, the pituitary receives its messages about what to do from the hypothalamus, which receives its messages from the brain. Now, Jeffrey would always talk about a trinity between these three glands, the pituitary, hypothalamus, and pineal. So we saw how the hypothalamus then gives messages to the pituitary. The pituitary then also sends out messages to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is specifically ruled by Neptune. And that's the gland that is most known for secreting melatonin, which when it's dark out, we start secreting melatonin. That's why it's so important to sleep in the darkened room, iPad. It helps your body normally regulate melatonin from the pineal gland. Okay? And then the pineal gland also can send out messages back to the hypothalamus. So we have Neptune with the pineal gland. We have Uranus and Moon with the hypothalamus. And we have Jupiter and Saturn with the pituitary. And those three glands are located in the brain. So in the Eastern system, you could even look again at this medulla ajna chakra with the sun and the moon. Then moving down, we have the throat chakra, which in the Eastern system is ruled by Mercury. And in the throat area, we have the thyroid and the parathyroid. I don't quite understand what the parathyroid does, okay? But the thyroid will have a lot to do with controlling metabolism. Mercury, again, we notice that when we have the thyroid's ruled by Mercury. I think the parathyroids are too, although Uranus might be involved in those parathyroids. But remember, we have the hyperthyroid and the hypothyroid. That has a lot to do with weight regulation, how well we metabolize things. So if you look at the fact that in both the Eastern and Western systems, the thyroid is ruled by Mercury. When you have people who have weight issues, you could look to Mercury and a stressed out Mercury for some possibilities. It's not the only place you'd look, but it's a place that can be overlooked sometimes.
So Kim, could it be like a stressed out Mercury, maybe with an awkward relationship to Jupiter?
Awkward relationship to Jupiter, awkward relationship to the moon,
Right,
fluids,
okay. Right.
Holding on that water weight, not being able to process through that. If you look at the pituitary having some role in regulating water in the body, then you can also, even look to there. That pituitary is going to have a lot to do with, growth and decay, and how well we can get everything in the body to function okay, to then metabolize okay, and blah, blah. And then we move down from there to the solar plexus. The solar plexus area, remember, in the Eastern system, Mars and Pluto. And so then In the western system, in that solar plexus area, we find the thymus gland, the adrenals, pancreas. And I had not talked about the thymus gland yet, but I did find it in my notes. The thymus gland is ruled by Neptune, and it is a gland that gives coating to the B and T cells that emanate from the bone marrow. In other words, the thymus gland is directly related to the immune system and ruled by Neptune. It's a gland that isn't talked about or looked at very much. Gives coating to your B and T cells.
Kimberly?
Yes?
You said the solar plexus is ruled by Mars and Pluto, and that rules the thymus, but then underneath that it's got a co-rulership with Neptune?
When I say the chakra area, I'm talking Eastern rulerships.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So I'm talking about how you can many times possibly see a link with the rulerships from the Eastern chakra system.
Got it, thanks.
So you can see how complicated it can get, you know. So again, it's always backing down to what's simple, what you know, and then as you progress through practice, that good old, yep, yep. Another one then is the adrenals. Remember we spoke about the adrenals. They produce the adrenaline and cortisone. Mars is adrenaline, Venus is cortisone. And, you know, adrenaline I understand pretty good. That's just energy, how much adrenaline we have to get the system to fight or flight, get up and go. I don't know what cortisone does. Does anybody? Heals. Oh.
Anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, inflammatory, yeah. See, anti-inflammatory. So you can see how that relates to Mars in that.
And Venus.
Or excuse me, and Venus, yes, Mars and Venus. And then we have the pancreas. And of course, we know that the pancreas is co-ruled by the moon and Pluto. And the pancreas is for the secretion of insulin, which controls the blood sugar in the body, which helps also regulate energy levels. So we can see how the solar plexus chakra, you know, from the eastern system, when we look at the glands that are in that area of the body, there's a lot to do with energy. Okay? What else? Pancreas. Seems like the pancreas secreted something else, but I'm not remembering what it is. Let me just check my notes. Anybody else know?
Well, it's related to the enzymes.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm wanting to say is enzymes rather than glands and hormones. And so then moving down to the excuse me, sacral chakra, that area, which in the eastern system is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, we find the gonads, which are the ovaries and the testes. And so these gonads can have several rulerships, all right? You will look at the prostate or the testes, the glands of the testes. That's going to be co-ruled by Jupiter and Saturn. And you can also see where Mars is in there with testosterone. When you start working with the ovaries, you have Venus for estrogen. You have Mars for progesterone. Women have minute amounts of testosterone. Men have minute amounts of estrogen. You can also find with the whole ovaries that there's a co-rulership from the moon. Remember, moon rules containers. You could possibly see the moon involved even with the glands because they're still containers. They're tiny little containers that control a lot. But you can still see the moon in there as well. So for me, with the whole endocrine system, it was overruled by Neptune. Neptune also ruling the immune system. When I look at nutrition with the endocrine system, it's just like you've got to have overall good nutrition on a cellular basis. I've not heard of a specific herb for a specific hormone or a specific gland, although they can have, you can see again, black cohosh can relate to estrogen, wild yam to progesterone. Zinc and silica to the testosterone. I still just think that with the overall endocrine system, linking it to Neptune, you just really want to have a well-functioning immune system. And that's going to be overall nutritious diet with the vitamins and minerals, overall good digestive abilities with all the enzymatic processes. I mean, I see just a lot of things that get involved nutritionally with that whole endocrine system. Okay, and for me, my favorite is, again, I love the plant medicines, so the herbs, and so the herbs we talked about with the immune system, which are astragalus root, pau d'arco, elderberries, cat's claw, my favorite in the western area, western herbs. Endocrine system, any questions? Any comments or anything? Jess, do you know any herbs that work for the endocrine system overall? Okay. Yeah, that's why I just...
Did you say straw grass?
Astragalus.
Oh,
Astragalus.
hello, ears.
Astragalus. Another thing that I just love overall with herbology is, for those of you who don't like nutrition out of pills, capsules, supplements, there are a lot of herbs you can research for vitamins and minerals to have minute qualities of vitamins and minerals. For instance, if you have bone issues, which is Saturn, horsetail is a great herb for natural silica. So you can, there's lots of information out there, and I don't have them all automatically in my head anymore. But you can definitely easily research those. That one book, Natural Healing with Herbs by Humbert Santello that I mentioned earlier, I'll put that in the suggested reading list with the manual, and you guys all get it emailed. He will mention all the different vitamins and minerals that herbs are good for. Alfalfa, taking alfalfa, taking any of the roots is really good to get minerals in the body. And I just intuitively, minerals are necessary in every cell, as we've learned with these cell salts. Probably the cell salts would be another good one. Just the bioplasma, again, as we talked about on quarterly basis, 4 times a year or something, I would think that would really help with a homeostasis of the whole endocrine system as well. Those minerals get forgotten. Okay, so endocrine system, any other questions or anything on that? If anything else pops in, I'll let you know. But otherwise, then we'll move on. And again, this little section called body systems, that's where we're going to move into. This is a great little collection of work. So we're going to start with the dermal system. The dermal system is the skin. It's the largest container we have, and the skin's ruled by Saturn. You will find a lot of co-rulerships to the skin from Uranus, because Uranus rules the nervous system, and when the nervous system gets stressed, we can see a lot of skin issues. When there's toxicity issues and it cannot come out through the other body systems, toxins will come out the skin. The skin is the largest detoxing organ. And so Saturn has the main role with the skin, but again, co-rulership with Uranus. I also see a co-rulership with Venus and Mars, because Venus white blood cells, Mars red blood cells. And again, you can see if you just look at these notes, we're not going to go over these notes in detail. This is something that I would really recommend you read. It's a great little short condensed way to know the body and all its various functions. But you can just, see there that there's lots of different cells that are in the skin. And so the dermal system also contains that cellular system, and cells which make up tissues, tissues which make up organs, various parts of the body. And so red blood cells are Mars. Nerve cells, if you're looking at this, is Uranus. Any of the muscle cells are going to be Mars. White blood cells are going to be Venus. So if you have somebody who comes to you and they have a lot of skin issues that are going on, you can look to Saturn, Uranus, and then you can look to Venus and Mars. And Mars even has some co-rulership with Venus of the kidneys. And again, when the kidneys are not detoxifying good, the skin is commonly known as the third kidney. You're starting to get some of these little planetary rulerships, or some of them starting to soak in. A few of them, a couple of them. Again, it's a lot to learn in 1 week and a lot, to know. Any questions in regards to the dermal system, which is the skin and all the cells that make up the skin? Maureen?
Yeah, I was just wondering, since the moon is containers, would the moon be the whole body container?
Well, you know what? We kind of thought about that one, and I mentioned that, there could be some possibilities to that. It's not traditionally known that way, but the skin is the largest container containing all these fluids in the body, which is the moon. So it's very possible you could look that way. I can see it. If there's one thing I've learned studying this health and wellness stuff, is it's not this planet rules this little isolated part of the body and nothing else does. All these planets work synergistically, just like all these body systems work synergistically.
Just a thought that popped in traditional astrology, the moon is exalted in Taurus. And, well, I don't know what anybody else thinks about Taurus, but to me, Taurus is the body.
Yep. You can see that. All right, so, and then we have skeletal system 1 and skeletal system 2.
Okay.
Back to the dermal system with the skin and muscles underneath it, which are ruled by Mars. Just Massage Therapist is going to talk about fascia. Fascia, is that correct? Yeah, give us a massage lesson.
You have the dermal layer, and then underneath that, you have where all the lymph is going to run through the body, and then you're going to have a layer of fascial tissue, which is a thin, almost white, kind of translucent layer that wraps around the muscle belly. Within the muscle belly, there are what are called bundles, and bundles are basically large groups of muscle fibers. Each bundle is wrapped in a sac of fascial tissue, and then in each bundle you have muscle fibers, and each muscle fiber is wrapped within its own sac of fascial tissue also. And so a lot of times when people come in with chronic, where it's not just the muscle tissue anymore, where they're starting to get, what's the word I'm looking for? You're starting to see structural changes. Oftentimes there's a binding of the fascia, and you have to actually work on the fascia rather than the muscle tissue itself to break up some of the scar tissue that's happening. And I explain fascial tissue to my clients as a layer of saran wrap on a bowl of fruit that you put in the fridge. You put it in the fridge and it looks perfect. You go in and you take your first piece of watermelon out and you put the piece of saran wrap back and it looks okay. Somebody else goes in, takes a couple more pieces, they put it back, it's a little wrinkled, but it looks okay. After 5 or 6 people are in there, now it's kind of bunched up and it's not covering the edge of the bowl anymore, and you actually have to go in, pull the saran wrap off the bowl, open it up, put it back over and smooth it out. And that's essentially what you're doing, as close as I can get to an analogy of the body when you're trying to work on that fascial tissue. And it also, because fluids are carried there, you know, you have things inhibited if there's a big binding in one area or another.
So if there's a binding, the fluids can't flow through
It's not
that
flowing,
fascial-
yeah.
fascia
Which, if,
tissue.
exactly, and if fluids aren't flowing the way that they should there, the body's probably not healing itself the way that it should, because the thing that promotes healing the quickest in the body, which is why massage helps so much, is the oxygen in the blood that's flowing into the area. And, you know,
So we know that muscles is Mars and all the muscle tissue is Mars. As I'm hearing you describe that fascia tissue, it sounds like it would be a co-rulership of Moon and Mars.
yeah.
Moon, the fluids, and Mars, it's still some type of
It's the container for the muscle tissue.
container for the Moon. There we go, fascia ruled by the Moon. Pam?
As I was saying, you asked me yesterday how I keep fluid, and because I had so many surgeries on my head, I've had tons of fascia work done. Because the body, when you have damage to the fascia, it bunches up. It gets hard to protect the wound. So I've had to do years of unblocking the fascia. And I have Moon square, Moon. I have Mars square, Moon, Neptune. So how I keep fluid is I get a lot of fascia work done I get body work done every month, usually if I can afford it, you know. But it just, that's one way I keep fluid on the body level. I've been doing it for years. I do it so often I don't think about it. But it's helped. It's actually helped my thinking too. Because if your fascia is bunched up in your head, that's going to affect the way you think. You know, so
Affect the neurons in the brain.
totally. So my obsessive thinking has gotten a lot less as we've loosened up all the fascia, which I also
interesting.
think brings blood flow, and
Yes.
blood flow I think is what also helped rejuvenate my hearing. Blood flow is a really profound thing to the body.
There
It
we
really rejuvenates, you know?
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's
Jess?
also going to, opening up the fascia in the cerebral area is also going to free the bone. The joints in the skull are called sutures, and they do move, but they move almost like a floating plate on their own. They're all sutured together, but it does have a natural, which is what cranial sacral, you know, balance is. It basically you hold the skull and allow those bones, as the muscles around it release, it allows them to shift and adjust back into their natural place. Well, if that fascia is pulling, they're not moving like they should be, essentially. So opening that up would also free up, for things to be moving the way that they should be, in which I'm assuming by logic would cause clearer thinking, higher functioning, because there's not,
Right.
again, as much stress or tension
Right.
in that area.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So I'm seeing this fascia that is all over the body, being the containers for the muscles, ruled by the moon. All those muscles, Mars, the red blood cells for energy, Mars, and so you could see harsh aspects, let's say, between Saturn and the moon, Saturn, moon, Mars. You can start to see those three planets in some combination, and we can start to see all of these muscle tension issues, this fascia that's hardening into distortions that affect the body. You talking about the brain and the cranial, you could see Saturn involved with Moon, Mars, or something in that way. So, okay, all right. I'm just trying to bring through some of the body the planetary rulerships as we talk about this. And so, and massage, cranial, sacral, all in those wellness systems that can be so important. Maureen?
Yes, I was wondering, by fascia work, do you mean deep tissue massage? No?
No, it's kind of different.
Work that's done with no moisturizer or lubricant at all, because you're trying to contact the tissue that's directly under the skin and in between the muscle fibers. If you're using any kind of moisturizer, you're going in and you're bypassing the fascia and getting into the muscle tissue itself.
Yeah, I had that done once, and it really hurts.
Sometimes it can, but it also, if there's a chronic structural issue, it's the fastest way to treat and alleviate what's going on.
Structure being Saturn. Yeah, I can see all that. I can see that Moon, Mars, Saturn right in there with skin, structure, muscle, and the fascia. Maureen, if I can share, honey, one of the things, Leroy had 30 years of baseball and swinging the bat a certain way, and Jesse's been working on him after class most days, and so he showed her how he swung the bat, and you could just exactly see where he had this fascia.
His tendons are merging together, and so the fascial tissue and the tendon tissue, being that both of them don't have tendons don't have as much blood flow as muscle, they're merging together, and there's scar tissue between the fascia and the tendons.
And so you can just see this straightening out. And so, I told him, I says, well, honey, maybe you just need to go see a doctor and see if you need to have surgery, which is not something we do, but it hurts him, and it takes his whole mobility on this side that he had all the Bell's palsy on, viral nervous system, Uranus, and it affects his ability to be functional. And so even though that massage, he may feel that facial massage that Jesse does, after the pain, the end result is more freedom and flexibility and less pain, especially with, I'm sure, practitioners who are well versed in it and good at their craft. Yes, yeah. So I'm not a person who likes rough massage either, but my brain can understand, wow, that makes sense, and I'm seeing the results. And you guys didn't see what his hand was like at the beginning of this week, but it's just amazing how she's straightening this out, and we're being able to correct it naturally without having to go in with any type of knife or anything. Jess?
Well, the thing is, when you go in with the knife, sometimes it does give relief and it alleviates the issue or the situation, but sometimes, being that it's a scar tissue area, the body, when it's laying down collagen and elastin fibers to correct or or basically suture up, the body's way of suturing up an injury. It happens inside the body and outside the body. The brain just lays down. Normally, you know, they lay down in straight rows one way, and then if you look at it under a
Crisscrosses?
microscope, it'll crisscross, you know. When the body's laying down scar tissue, the brain is just basically sending messages to heal this as quickly as possible to stop the bleeding, so you get
Crisscross and all over.
all over the place. And then that's basically how scar tissue is formed. So when you cut scar tissue, the body may lay scar tissue down in the same formation.
So it may or may not help.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, or if you do it, it may help. It may clean the area up, but if you don't get work on it right away afterwards, you have the potential of creating the scar tissue underneath the scar. And so now you're dealing with adhesions to the scar itself.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So Jessie gave me 3 massage exercises. I'm going to learn a little massage, and I have an assignment to do Leroy's hand a couple times a day, and we'll see where he's at the next time you see him. So, but yeah, fascinating stuff. And thank you, because I can see that fascia being, you know, having a moon fluid influence along with the muscles, Mars, Saturn, overall skin. So you can start to see the various planetary combinations that you could see. Anything else? Back to that dermal system that we were talking about. Okay, then moving on to the skeletal system. You'll see in your little happy handout you've got skeletal system 1 and 2. The first system works a lot with bone, and of course the bones themselves, the skeletal system, those are all ruled by Saturn. And of course there's where we get into our 3 basic minerals, calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus are known for strong, healthy bones. Now I personally like to put some of the MSM in there, even though I'm sure it's got to have something to do with bones, because it's the 3rd most common mineral in the body after calcium. And I'll have to look up my list of, I don't have that one in my head. I don't know if magnesium's number 2, it might be another mineral. But it's calcium something, sulfur, organic sulfur, 3rd most common mineral in the body. Found in every tissue, every cell of the body. So yes, that might be involved in the whole Saturn one as well. I've kind of put this MSM as like a Saturn or Saturn mineral, although Saturn ruled mineral, although I'm still playing with that to work with that. And so then again, you know that the bone marrow is where the B cells, T cells come from that then turn out to be immune system cells. So Saturn can have a lot to do with it rules the bone marrow. So Saturn, Neptune, can you start to see a relationship between the immune system and the quality of the immune cells that'll come out? And then Venus has the rulership of these white blood cells, which is the immune system's main defense against toxins in the body. So you can start to see Saturn, Venus, Neptune. So you can look for various combinations thereof in that area when it comes to the immune cells that emanate from bone marrow. Okay? Following this? Is this making sense? Going kind of back over these systems and then plugging in planets like this to help out? Jess, comment? Oh, sorry. Oh, glass. She grabbed the glass. I thought she grabbed the microphone. Oh, and you'll like to read this thing. I mean, really, osteo is bone, okay? And the bones are always continually building and decaying, all right? And so this little information tells us that when you get, I think it is, this is talking specifically about growth plates in the brain. Those growth plates in the brain don't harden in a male until they're 18 to 21 years old. In a female, they harden between 16 and 18 years old. So that's an interesting tidbit about the bones in the brain, in the head. Now, our bones all together, we have approximately 206 bones, and they stop growing around 20 to 25. And so, in other words, the cells that build bone are more abundant from 20 to 25, and then the cells, the bone decaying cells are going to start being more and more abundant over the bone building cells after that. So again, the importance with that whole skeletal system of having yoga, some weight-bearing exercise, because when you exercise those muscles, they affect the bones. Jesse, give it to me again. I still haven't got this one clear. Tendons and ligaments. Tendons.
Tendons are muscle to bone. Yes. Ligaments are bone to bone. Ligaments have more elastin, or have more collagen. Tendons have more elastin. So tendons are more elastic. Ligaments, like if you pull a ligament, if you overstretch it, if you the ligament doesn't go back. Not like a rubber band. A muscle, you can stretch it, and eventually it's going to break, it's going to rip. But if you stretch it, it goes back like a rubber band. So the muscle, it's the end of the muscle to the bone. The bone to bone, the ligament, if you stretch it, it'll overstretch a lot further than a muscle or a tendon will, but it won't go back. So you end up with a ligamentous laxity, which causes weak joints, basically. Your joints aren't held together quite as tight. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I'm just visualizing Mars and Saturn as you're saying that. Definitely.
What was it? More elastin in the tendons and more what in the ligaments?
Collagen.
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 Okay.
So there's a part of me that wants to say elastin, Mars, collagen, Saturn. Just listening. If you're starting to look at that. You know, so it's some Mars Saturn thing. You could see some issue with ligaments, you know, in somebody or something like that. You know, somebody going through a bad Mars or Saturn transit, and what happens? You know, you have the ski accident where you pull a ligament or you tear a ligament. You know, can you see that happening? The bones and muscles, Saturn, Mars. Make sense? Okay, and so then under, well, that was skeleton system 2 that we just talked about. You'll see some of this stuff written down in here. It also goes through all the different types of joints that we have, you know, and how we have the socket and we have the, what do you call it, the ball? Is that it? Am I saying this right? Ball and socket joints. You know, they come together in all those various ways. You can start to read some of this stuff on skeletal system 2. You know, as I look at this, it just seems to be a Mars-Saturn thing to me. And I've put joints to Mars, but I could just really see a co-rulership coming in there with Mars and Saturn. Again, Mars being that more elastic part. Movement part. Yes, movement part. Thank you, honey. And Saturn being the more stable part. Okay, questions with the skeletal system? That makes sense for everybody? Anything else? Again, the importance of minerals. All right? And again, just to repeat this, you've got to have a good digestive system with good enzymes to assimilate the vitamins, to then assimilate the minerals. And those minerals so necessary to good, strong bone formation with that. Now, speaking of bones, then again, you know, estrogen comes in there with that bone production. And, you know, both men and women produce a certain amount of estrogen. But for women, again, when they go through menopause and that estrogen secretion reduces, that's when you can see the hardening of the bones and the brittleness of the bones and the osteoporosis coming in. That's a specific Venus-Saturn thing. And so for women, important to get that estrogen, progesterone. You can easily get that from herbs over long periods of time, much more healthier for the body than our chemical hormone replacement therapies, or HRT. Maureen?
So someone after menopause should be taking what then?
Again, I mentioned my favorite is the Solaray brand 7D, which is, hormonal change or hormonal balance. But it contains the medicinal herbs that would be for both black cohosh, licorice root, estrogen.
What's it called again?
Solaray, which is Solar Ray, 7, number 7, D as in dog. Their 7 formulas are all for female hormones. 7C is, again, I'm repeating what I said earlier this week, but 7C is to balance out all the PMS symptoms and to balance out healthy cycles. And like if I see women start having heavy bleeding cycles, I have 2 sisters. All 3 of us have used 7C to normalize our cycles and to, I totally released PMS when I used that 7C blend. And what's in it? Hold on. I have the old formulation, so, and this material right here is 25 years old, so they probably have definitely changed a few things, but I'll give you some of the main herbs that are in there. And it may just be similar herbs, it's just how they put them together. 7C had the black cohosh, the licorice root, raspberry. Raspberry leaves can be very, very good for helping with cramps, with toning down the uterus. Raspberry leaf is the most common herb recommended for toning the uterus before delivery. Raspberry leaf is so mild you can take it all the way through pregnancy. Take it before you're pregnant. But not the cohosh. Not the cohosh, yes, not the cohosh. Raspberry leaves only. Yeah, this formula 7C, it's not a pregnancy formula. It's just toning the menstrual cycles for young women. Much easier than putting them on the pill. Passion flower's in this one, which is a great one. The saw pimento, it's got the wild yam, it's got the kelp. Again, the 7C is a tonic for irregular female cycles, heavy female cycles, etc. All right, so we got a little off track there, but working with the skin. Anything, or excuse me, skeletal system. Anything else that anybody can think of in regards to this? All right, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick little break and come back and we'll start in on the digestive system? All right. And so, any questions from what we have said with the endocrine system or the dermal and skeletal systems? All right. Moving on to the digestive system. There is a lot to this. You've heard me speak about it a lot during this whole week. I feel that it is so important. Digestive enzymes overall are ruled by Pluto, and enzymes are protein substances that are like catalysts. In other words, they cause chemical reactions to happen in the body, chemical reactions that break down foods into nutrients, chemical reactions that allow us to take the nutrients and reabsorb this. Enzymes exist all the way through the body. And remember, we had digestive enzymes for processing food, and we had metabolic enzymes for controlling all the different various functions in the body. I also will put the moon sometimes in those digestive enzymes, working with that as well, because as you look at the digestive system, which is the GI tract, which is the mouth to the anus, and everything evolved from from one end to the other, moon gets involved in a lot of those areas.
It's one big container,
It's one big container, yeah. It's
elementary canal.
yeah, it's one big pipe, tube from one end to the other. And so I relate that, again, a lot to Pluto and the moon. There could be more things involved, but those are just the main two for me. Pluto comes in and works with that small intestine, the large intestine, and the colon. Those are all Pluto areas. Those are all involved in that whole digestive process. Most of your nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream in the small intestines. So Pluto, moon. All right? I'm not planning to go a lot into the whole digestive system. It's a process that could take forever. Obviously, when we eat food, we are taking in carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And I've not ran across anything that will put carbs to this planet, fats to that planet, proteins to that planet. I've not quite ran into anything that does that. I've been playing around with it. So I'll give you what I'm playing with. But again, please, I'm not here espousing gospel. Fats to me, which are lipids, has to be Jupiter. Has to be the moon, the fluids. Okay? So I can definitely put Jupiter with the fats that we eat. Jupiter, the liver digests the fats. Okay? I put proteins to Saturn, Sun, Pluto. I mean, we need proteins to live. And so I relate that to like life force with Sun, soul life force with Pluto, Pluto being such a life and death thing. And then I put carbs. I put Mars. Mars just seems to be carbohydrates because our carbs are energy. And it might be a Venus-Mars thing because there's so much that those two co-rule together. Leroy?
I was just wondering, backing up with the proteins, if you could know how the Pluto relates to the metabolic process with enzymes. Could Pluto
Enzymes are proteins.
be the amino acid side of the protein scale, and then Saturn be?
Oh,
You
good
see what
one.
I'm saying?
Yes, I
So
do.
Pluto may be amino
That could-
acids.
And that could definitely be it. When we come into amino acids, they're the proteins of the body, and there's 20. 8 of those amino acids are essential. That means they are essential to provide in your diet because your body can't produce them. And then we have 12 amino acids that are called non-essential. And that means we can produce them from various foods that we eat. And so, I can see that. And that may change. I just thought, these 10 planets, man, they've all got to divide up between carbs, fats, and proteins. I don't quite know where I put Mercury or Uranus. I'm tending to put them in carbs for energy, but I don't know for sure. Where do we put Neptune? Neptune, I'm playing around with fats because Neptune is so, nebulous, fluids. Fats are the fluids. Fats are so important as the body's lubricators. And as we talked again, essential fatty acids are so essential for the brain and depression, Neptune. So that's kind of where I'm playing around with a whole different foods. But stay tuned as that gets fine-tuned. So digestive system, Pluto, or just any questions on that? Make sense? We're trying to do an enzymatic process, a cataclysmic process with that. Moving along, urinary system. One of the main components of the urinary system is the kidneys. Kidneys are ruled by Venus. There's a co-rulership with Mars. Okay, Mars is a secondary ruler. So the urinary system is where we are passing the toxins out of through the liquids. Okay, liquids, urinary, urethra. The lungs, you know, you can, if you look at that first little section of the urinary system, you know, the lungs breathe out gases, the skin sweats, the intestines excrete waste. The urinary system cleanses the blood and regulates the amount of water in the body. So the urinary system, you can see, would be blood, Venus and Mars, fluids. You can see Moon coming in there. Moon, regulating the water, the fluids in the body. Okay? Make sense? Questions on that? So this is, again, a good reference to go to learn about these bodily functions, and then you can work with the various planetary rulerships that are in there. Okay? And it also tells you and the tail end of the urinary system, you know, you've got the bladder and the sphincter muscles. The sphincter muscles are Saturn. Saturn, you know, contracts. You don't release it out of those sphincter muscles unless you choose to do so. Jess?
Then what would it be the exact opposite too? Because there are people with urinary incontinence where
Yes.
they can't contract.
Yes.
And that's
That
not
would be
Mars, that's Saturn?
That would be the bladder thing. That would have Saturn to do with it. That would have the moon to do with it. The bladder being a container and the moon ruling containers.
What about the contracting of that? Is that Saturn or is that Mars?
It could be both. It could be both because the sphincter muscles, they're muscles. But it's Saturn because it traps it, or if it's not working, you know, it lets it through. So it's Saturn over main primary ruler. Mars could come in as a secondary ruler with muscles. Moon is the bladder. Yes, Marie?
So would aspects that are not friendly cause incontinence?
Yes. Yeah. Stressful aspects to the moon. Your bladder won't, you know, may not function so much anymore. And, you know, just the whole general aging process. If you can see the muscles that, you know, contract and open up, and as we lose elasticity as we age, yes, you can start to see the secondary rulership with Mars. In women, it's got to also relate to the hormones, because many times after menopause, that's when women will experience the bladder, the incontinence of the bladder. Jess?
Where do the kidneys come in then with this also? Because the kidneys, you know, things are processed through the kidneys and then released into the bladder.
The kidneys, you know, filter the blood. Mars is red blood cells, Venus is white blood cells. And so that would be a lot to do with Venus and Mars. So you could see Venus and Mars through the kidneys, then Moon through the bladder, then back to Saturn, Mars. Can we squeeze it and hold it, or let it go? So you can, there's no cut and dried one size fits all. This is it. But that's not there in life either. Okay, so from the urinary system, moving on to the circulatory system. Circulation, which is blood, okay? You can see again where we can have Venus and Mars in there. The circulatory system is going to, the main rulers are going to be the sun, which rules the heart, and Uranus, which rules circulation in general. And here's the thing about the, let me see if I can find it. Where did I talk about this? Okay, let me think about this one again. We have the central nervous system and the endocrine system. We have the circulatory and the respiratory. That was it. The nervous system and the endocrine system work synchronistically together, which is Uranus, Neptune. Okay? And then we have the circulatory and the respiratory. And I want to put the circulatory's main ruler as the sun. Sun circulatory, you put Uranus respiratory, and they oppose each other on the zodiacal wheel. So the respiratory, circulatory systems have a synergistic relationship. And to cut ahead to the respiratory system, which is breath, which is main ruler Uranus, co-rulers for me, Mercury, Jupiter. We take in the oxygen through the lungs and the heart interrelate, and I haven't quite figured, I don't have that one down to memory yet. And then the lungs breathe out carbon dioxide. So if I got this correctly with the interrelationship of the circulatory and respiratory, we take in the breath through the lungs, it passes over into the heart, your red blood cells, your red arteries are oxygenated, okay? And then when it gets all the way out there to the far end extremities of the bodies and the capillaries, Venus, Mars, crosses over and starts then coming back through the veins. Blue veins carry all the waste and the carbon dioxide. The heart puts it back into the lungs and we breathe it out. Anybody correct me? Did I get that one right? I think that's how that works. Yeah. So circulatory. Yeah. Yeah, and so the heart is ruled, mainly by the sun. You see the heart is a muscle, though. So sometimes I can see where there can be some co-rulerships with Mars in there. Could specifically be even like a Mars-Sun stressful aspect. You can see that start to come in, and it might affect the heart as a muscle. The plaque, that starts to harden on the arteries. That's Venus. Venus rules the veins and the capillaries. Mars, this is secondary. Venus rules the arteries and the veins and the capillaries. Mars is a secondary ruler. Hardening of the arteries, arteriosclerosis, specifically to Venus. So that's why sometimes I think Venus might relate to fats too. It's just the hardening, the stuff, and we all know that when we have the wrong fats in our diets, not just the fats, but especially those saturated fats, that they will become plaque along the veins and arteries that can harden and close down those vessels.
I was just thinking of the same relationship between Neptune and Venus as analogous to maybe between the saturated fats, the monofats, and then the lipids, like you spoke of, the essential fatty acids being Neptune, the higher octave. The lower octave of the fat spectrum would be the olive oils, your monosaturated fats.
Possibly.
Could that be a relationship?
That
Similar
could
to
be
the analogy between Pluto, and Saturn on the protein side. Pluto being the amino acids, the higher octave of that spectrum, and
Right?
Saturn being the proteins themselves.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So the circulatory system that's so interrelated. You starting to see this? You got sun, which rules the heart, all right? But you've also got then some secondary rulerships with Mars and the muscle of the heart. You've got Venus and Mars in there with the blood, with all of the veins, arteries, capillaries. And then this has such a co-relationship with, working with these body systems. When you have anemia and hemophilia, when there's iron deficiencies, Mars rules iron. And remember, Mars was energy. And so when you don't have enough iron in your blood, you don't have energy. All right? And when you have too much iron in the blood, I think that then also relates to a whole sluggishness. I'm not big on that one. I don't know the details on that one. Anybody else? No. Too much iron, too little iron. But when there, pardon? Too little is anemia? Yes, yes. And hemophilia is when your blood platelets don't work and clot, stop the bleeding. Okay? That you need vitamin K. Vitamin K is a fat-soluble vitamin. I sometimes wonder if Mars doesn't rule vitamin K because vitamin K allows the blood to clot. Okay? So I sometimes think that connection goes there. All right? And so then, again, because we've been talking about the circulatory, respiratory system connected, moving on to the respiratory system, we have, again, it is overruled by Uranus. Uranus rules the lining of the lungs. Uranus rules the atmosphere out in the world. So the quality of the air can be Uranus. Their secondary rulerships, Mercury and Jupiter. I so work with Mercury and Jupiter with breath work. You know, I can just see those two, you know, I've just always just thought they were a natural association. Mercury, quick, short, shallow, rapid breath. Jupiter, big, deep breaths that we start to learn, you know, when we move into meditative practices. And so respiratory, Uranus, Mercury, and to some extent Jupiter. Make sense? Oh, and then, yeah, you can read about more of this whole lung-blood interchange, or your lung-heart interchange through this respiratory system. Okay? Anything else? 20,000 breaths a day. Diaphragm to me is Mars because the diaphragm is the muscle that helps the lungs contract and expand. It's kind of got that reverse energy to it, but to me, diaphragm would fall in there with Mars. And then the last one, which we've got two more to go. Muscular system, Mars. All those muscles, tissues, etc. Hold on, Jess, did you want to say something?
I had a funny correlation. You were talking about the diaphragm being Mars. In Chinese medicine, when you get hiccups, they call it rebellious qi. So it just, you know, kind of funny. Mars
Mars rebellion. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so the muscular system, you know, again, overall rulership is just Mars, the energy, the movement, you know, and it gives you some information with the weight training. Oh, and there is the hiccup. Your diaphragm is responsible for hiccups. Muscle in your chest below your lungs pulls down and tightens. You inhale. Your lungs fill with air. When you exhale, your lungs deflate and your diaphragm relaxes. So I put that, even though it's in the respiratory system, they've got it here in the muscular system. So yeah, I can definitely relate this to Mars. Okay, all right, that one's, I think, pretty simple for us. All right, nervous system. Nerves, Uranus. Okay, Uranus rules the central nervous system. It has primary rulership of all of the neurons. It has primary rulership of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Although again, with the Eastern chakra system, I really pay attention to that one with the nodes. The South node is the sympathetic fight or flight with the Eastern system. The North node is the parasympathetic rest and digest in the Eastern system. Secondary rulers of the nervous system, Mercury. And sometimes I have a hard time taking Mercury-Jupiter out of a planetary pair. You also see Mercury-Jupiter having, secondary rulerships of left brain, right brain, with Uranus, of the whole nervous system. In the nervous system, you can even start to see Saturn in there, even though the central nervous system, which runs up and down the spinal cord, doing its little figure eights as we looked with the chakras, that's going to be ruled by Uranus, but the spine itself, the bones of it, ruled by Saturn. So you could see a Saturn Uranus thing going on with that whole spinal cord, the energy between it and the physicality between it, Uranus, Saturn. All right? Yeah. The nervous system, okay, in regards to, you see where it tells you different types of nerves, the sensory nerves, and that'll go all the way out to the peripheral nervous system. The sensory nerves pick up on everything. They're the body's sensors. They sense what's going on. Okay, so I can even see Venus having a little co-rulership in there. They sense what's going on, and those sensory nerves send everything back up the nervous system to the brain instantaneously. The brain then filters through, processes through, and sends the messages back out. And it tells the motor nerves to move. Motor nerves, I could see Mars. I could see those sensory nerves, Venus, motor nerves, Mars, underneath Uranus, in there with Uranus, when you're looking for some of the stresses and imbalances that can happen. But and so then when those sensory nerves send everything back to the brain, and the brain tells the muscles to move, tells all of the glands to secrete or stop, that central nervous system, again, interrelates to the endocrine system and is a big, it's the central processing, central nervous system. Okay? So you can always look to that when you, or you can always look to Uranus whenever you have anything going on in those areas. And remember, a specific herb that helps calm down the brain and balance that whole central nervous system is faux tea root. That's one that Jeffrey would always talk about a lot. Another herb that really works for the nervous system is valerian root. Valerian root really helps us calm down to sleep. Passion flower calms the brain without putting it to sleep. So valerian root is an herb that you would want to take in the evening. Passion flower herb is one you can take during the day. If you're someone who runs a lot of Uranus or Mercury nervous energy, passion flower is one that can really help to calm down this brain. And in my understanding, help it function better. The nervous system is also so related to the B vitamins. And so those B vitamins might be ruled by Uranus. I'm starting to, I can go out there and I can find it in 50 zillion books, or I can go find it in various astrological cookbooks. But I've just been trying to kind of organically do some of this and just kind of sense it for myself, and I would invite you guys to do the same thing. Just like we can have Vedic astrology and Western astrology, and they both can tell us the same story, you can develop your own tools as health and wellness evolutionary astrologers that will then allow you to work with arriving at the same place. just found that that cut and dried is not it. When you have tingling of the spine, spasms, strange sensations, all that stuff is ruled by Uranus, connected to the central nervous system. Okay? All right? Making sense? The neurons, the synapses, you know, that are the endings of the neuron cells that have to connect to each other to allow us to create dendrites of new information, or that allow us to connect together to learn how to do some function in the body repetitively so we become better and better and better at it. All those kind of things are ruled by Uranus, the neurons, the synapses, etc. Maureen?
Yes, I remember Jeffrey writing some kind of formula to make faux tea, and I was wondering if there's an easier way, like a capsule.
Faux tea is just a single herb. Were you talking about his lung formula for the respiratory system? He used to talk about his lung formula for the respiratory system, and that was mullein leaf, which is here in the Northern Plains. It's a Native American herb that's been used for the ears forever. It was Native American tobacco, and that's if you go out there. If we go on our little walk today, if I see mullein, I'll point it out to you guys. It's a very fuzzy, fat leaves, very soft. I mean, you can just put them up, and I love mullein. But it's a biannual, so you see all that fat little leaves that's just low to the ground, and then the second year it shoots up this stalk that has all these tiny little yellow flowers. That's mullein, okay? And the leaf is what you put in the lung formula, and you can literally smoke just dried mullein, okay? And it is healthy for the lungs. It's not like tobacco. And then you can take the oil from the plant stalk itself. It is an old remedy for ear infections. That you can, yeah. And so, didn't mean to sidetrack. The lung formula was mullein leaf, hyssop, which is an herb that Jeffrey said Jesus used. And he would use echinacea. And I've got to see if I can find the other one, if I can think of the other one that he would talk about. I think I'm forgetting one herb, but mullein, echinacea, hyssop, HYSSOP. Let me see if I can find this quick. Sinuses. Feel like I'm forgetting an herb, but I don't remember what it was. But the Jay and Annette Purrier that you can search out for the Sanicle, they also had Jeffrey's lung formula. I'll find out what that other herb is and let you know. Can you find it in an easier way?
No, I was just wondering if I should take faux tea for my heavy Uranian stuff, and
Totally.
if I could get it, can I get it in a capsule?
Yes. You can get it in a capsule. I like to take faux tea, FO-TI root in tincture form, because it is a root, and when you tincture the roots, you can extract more of the medicinal properties. Okay, and you can easily buy it in tincture form. I mean, you can take both, but I like the tincture because I feel that when roots are tinctured, you can get more of the medicinal properties easier. When you take the roots as capsules, your body has to go through the digestive process with that herb in order to then assimilate it. Whereas tinctures, they can go directly into the bloodstream, and the medicinal properties of the herb, the nutritive properties, can go exactly to whatever specific organs, body systems they need to go to. Okay, and so we've made it through the body systems. That kind of helped? I wanted to just reinforce some of these little planetary rulerships for you. Any questions overall on any of these body systems? And I'm looking at this 29-degree houses all the way around your chart. And I'm looking at that Venus at 2958 Aries. And in the 8th house, have you played with Venus in Aries, or in the 7th versus the 8th?
It does come into the 7th in,
I mean, playing with the time, like,
it's
Have you
definitely
read-
Venus and Aries, believe me.
okay, all right.
Very self-centered when it comes to sexuality. So, yeah, it's not a Taurus sexuality.
Okay. If I may, I'm going to ask you a few questions about your chart and your background, and is it okay if we talk about some of your medical history?
Right, but there's a few other things that I thought about, because I was
Okay.
a premature baby.
Okay.
And when they pulled me out of the womb, they used some kind of instrument, and then I evidently had a big scar across my face. I was in this incubator for about a month with this big scar, evidently the ugliest baby I've ever seen. But, so, as a result of that, I think is when I was cross-eyed when I was a child. And when they corrected that, they just cut the cord there, so when other people look at 3D things, they're flat to me. So, and I'm not sure which eye is the bad eye. I don't look through both eyes at the same time. So it's kind of like if I put my hand over here, I'll look out of this eye. And the driver's tests are crazy. I have to get one eye closed in order to read them because it's like, oh, that's all black, and then it's like, oh, okay, we got to get the other eye working. So, so there's kind of an eye problem. But after they cut the cords and things, then I didn't need to wear glasses. I was in my mid-40s when I needed to go back to glasses again. So,
Okay.
so that's that. What else happened in my childhood?
Is it all right for the tape if we talk about the medical experiences you've had with cancer? I mean, just briefly, so that people know that you're a breast cancer survivor twice.
Well, we don't say that. I told my nieces, and if you put the word cancer in my obituary, I said,
Exactly.
but I don't like the word survivor. It's like,
Okay.
you know.
Tell us how we should say it for you.
You can just say cancer, breast cancer. I don't like to feel like some kind of.
You know how I like to say it? Breast imbalances in process of healing.
Okay. Okay, anything but the survivor thing, you know. These walks for cancer, they irritate me, but I was the poster child for it a couple years ago. They took this nice big picture. I had half a page in the newspaper and this full-size picture of me, and it's like, and that was the only reason I did it. And then I was on the radio for a while, too. I have a tape of when I was on the radio. But that was only because of the publicity. It was not because of the cancer. I would have rather had it over something else, but you know, you don't always get to pick that.
Sure. Paternal, maternal history.
My mother died from lung cancer. She started smoking when she was 10 and she died at 84. She had a very bad diet her whole life. She would have lived longer if her body wasn't in such bad shape. She had a heart attack, a few years before she died. And she was a big woman, and she was down to like 80 pounds soaking wet. She went from like a D cup to wearing T-shirts. So, Dad, my dad went through a lot of different, when he was in the war, when they were taking Iwo Jima, he was shot in the head and almost died. And that turned out, as much as he talked about this, really he didn't talk about it, but the things he talked about, but when I found out it was his 25th birthday that he got shot in the head, to me it was like, oh, now that was something interesting about what happened instead of all this other stuff. He was bipolar, had a real fear of dying, was kind of a hypochondriac. If he didn't think he was getting enough attention, he'd make himself sick enough so he could go to the hospital. So he was one of the few people in the family that liked the hospital. And he ended up dying from pneumonia. He had, what did he have? He came home from Phoenix one time with the flu or the pneumonia, something going around, and they couldn't find out what it was. They just poured antibiotics through his body. So he, and then I had a grandmother that was kind of the same kind of hypochondriac, the two people that liked hospitals. She talked them into putting a pacemaker in her. So, but she had other medical problems too, so.
Well, the first thing that's sticking out to me, listening to you describe, you know, a mother who died of lung cancer and a father who transitioned with leukemia, pneumonia.
Right.
Excuse me. You have an 11th house Pluto. When Pluto's in the 11th house, you can find weaknesses in the lungs.
There's also South Node in Aquarius.
A South Node in Aquarius.
Okay.
And so really working to strengthen your lungs through breath work, through herbs, which will always periodically cleansing the lungs with various herbs. We were just speaking earlier about the mullein and the hyssop. Those are two really good ones. You can probably find, various companies that have herbal blends for the lungs. I would say that would be an area that you would just want to take care of because of, again, parental background, 11th house Pluto, Aquarius in that South Node. Also, 29 degrees Aquarius rules the 6th house. So this would be an area then that you would want to work with. And Uranus in Gemini 9th, I could see that relating a little bit to the breath as well, the whole lung thing, working with that. Anybody else, as she's talking, as you're looking at things, starting to see anything? Chris?
I sort of see circulation issues as well, because I think
Yes.
with the Pluto and Leo in the 11th, it's the circulation and the lungs, and it's all those systems that we were talking about this morning, right? The respiratory, the circulation, all kind of combined, and there really is a strong emphasis on that. And also, she is a Pluto North Node conjunct, square the Sun, Mercury.
11th house Pluto, South Node in the 5th. You could, the nodal axis in the 5th, 11th, in addition to that circulation stuff, you could have to find sensitivities in regards to the heart and the brain.
The heart and the brain, so much. Dad has circulation problems in his legs, okay, and I have circulation problems basically in my feet and partially up the legs. Part of that, my mother's grandfather, or my mother's father, my grandfather, had diabetes. So, and Mom had the diabetes, and I have the diabetes, so, and I got that when I was about 55, 56.
And that's the pancreas, and that's Pluto.
And that definitely is,
Yep, you can see that. That would also be the moon. You know, that moon-Neptune conjunction in Libra, just inside the ascendant, that could start to bring in all kinds of areas. You would be somewhat like Pam, really needing to keep this lymphatic system clean, okay, because too much fluidity buildup, too much acidity buildup could then start to create a toxicity around various areas. Although I will say you've got that nice trine between Uranus, Neptune, the moon, and the South Node. You know, the thing that I really liked that I heard from you, Sue, over the course of this week, and I've just heard you say it a couple of times in various ways, working with what we would know as cancer imbalances, you just said, you know what? You got to figure out what you want to live for. Got to figure out something to live for. And I just thought, wow, that was a nice little key thing that worked. That's working for you. It works for all of us.
Right. you need to find a reason to get out of bed in the morning or you're not going to get out of bed.
Right, right. Now, if I can, I wanted to go a little bit into this because I'm just playing around with whenever we have planets square the nodes. Is that creating, you know, an area of weakness for possibilities of imbalances? And so when we look at Venus, we start to look at the white blood cells. We start to look at all the hormonal issues. We've got Venus in Aries, the Mars sign. We could look again at hormonal issues. We also have it in the 8th house. We could look at genetics with hormonal issues starting to come around. I don't know if there would be one signature in a female that would relate to the possibility of breast imbalances. I would say that anytime we have a stressed out Venus, we would have to work with issues of, we'd have to work with immune system issues with the white blood cells. Because again, the white blood cells is what isolates and moves toxins out of the body. Kim first.
She looks to me like one of the things that she could really benefit from is an overall immune system boost.
Yeah.
When I look at the chart and you kind of follow it around the wheel, because that's kind of the way I am learning to work, I can see, you know, the ruler of the 12th house being Leo, and then you follow that to where it sits, and then you see it's got an aspect to Neptune, okay, and it's conjunctor Venus, which is conjunctor Moon, and then the rising's at that critical degree of 29, and then Neptune's at 1, so that's still a pretty tight conjunction for overall health issues. It looks to me like overall I would be strengthening my immune system with some of those herbs that Kim Marie's talked about, mixing up a couple of those tinctures.
Or just buying the herbs in capsules and taking, you know, 2 at a time. You put Neptune inside the ascendant, definitely could have just overall immune system issues and need to strengthen the immune system overall, yes.
Well, in the first cancer, they took all the lymph nodes out of the right side of my arm, so.
Moon, Neptune,
So-
first house.
And they didn't go into, what do they call it, edema. I had the surgery in 1999, and it didn't go into edema until, was it 2000, let's see, 2003. It went, like, this hand and this hand, this was about twice the size of this one. And of course, in my way of doing things, I wasn't going to do anything about it till I talked to someone else, and she said her edema got so bad she couldn't even close her fingers. I mean, you have to tell me something that, other than that I'm going to die. Dying is like the end, but something I'm going to have to live with that I don't think I can live with, like not being able to move my fingers. So,
And so what did you do?
well, after the second mastectomy, I went and had therapy for it. And what they do there is they wrap the thing, it's kind of like choking it. And so I did that a couple times and I thought, well, it's kind of going down. So if I really wanted to get rid of this thing, I could. And so then I didn't really do anything about it. And I was looking at it this morning and I thought, well, somebody can't normally see even the difference between the two hands. I mean, there's actually veins of this hand, whereas it had plumped up so bad there weren't veins. So, so it's just, I think a lot of the stuff that happens to me happens because of the transits. You know, I've almost
you played with
everything
that?
that's happened to me, I've gone back to where the transits are. So,
Yeah, well, and with transiting Pluto coming up upon your 4th house, ruled by the moon, ruling that lymph system, you're going to want to really work to, again, improve the immune system. I would definitely say herbal protocols that improve the immune system,
okay.
okay? And I would say the cell salts, you know, the bioplasma, working with that because that's so gentle and easy to work with. And then check out the cell salts that work with strengthening the immune system. And just have yourself on a regular on-off protocol with them. That might be strengthening the immune system as Pluto comes up on this 4th house. would, again, be a good protocol possibilities for you.
Okay.
Not trying to diagnose, treat, or cure, tell you what to
No.
do, sharing information.
I've been kind of looking at information all year. I mean, I've kind of I've gotten myself involved with a couple other kind of seminar things based on what do I need to fix here.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is that, but you'll notice Pluto's also trying my Venus, so it's.
Well, and you've got an 8th house sun. Now, when you have planets in the 8th house, of which we've got Mercury, Venus, Mercury, and the sun, you can look at potentialities of the C word, of the genetic stuff, but you also have that sun in Taurus and Mercury balsamic. When you make your mind up, I'm going to live, and I'm going to decide what I'm going to live for, you've got the regenerative abilities with that 8th house sun.
Oh, yeah. No,
Definitely.
I just surprised the medical world by, the day after I had the mastectomy, they told me I should stay in the hospital for a week, but they said, if you get out of bed and go to the bathroom, they said, we'll let you go home. So I did. I crawled out of bed and went to the bathroom. And I said, are you sure you want to go home? Oh, yeah. It's something about not having any control over, it's like when people come to visit you, and it's like, there's no way to get rid of them if you don't want to see them. So at home, you can just, oh, I'm not home. There you're just stuck. I think that's where my problem comes with the hospitals.
Got it. Taurus wanting its own little cocoon. What else? Anybody else starting to see anything as we're looking at this? Kim?
Well, I also thought that maybe she should, with the overall immune system, also the kidneys, take a look at the kidneys because of the Neptune
blood.
being in Libra.
In the
and
first.
Right, and then it's in conjunct to her Venus, which both of those have to do with kidneys.
Mm-hmm. And the Venus in Aries, yes.
And the square to Saturn. It's wide, but it's there.
The wide Neptune square to Saturn. Why were you seeing that, Chris?
Oh,
What?
the kidneys. Libra, the kidneys.
Yes.
Square to Saturn, calcification in the
Got it.
kidneys, right?
Okay, there you go.
And a diabetes link somehow. I'm sure that we talked about it at one
Yes.
point this week.
3 planets in the 8th.
My diabetes is a little different than other people's. I do heal really fast. When I go to bed at night, my blood sugars go up. The doctor told me 5% of the people have this problem instead of going down. So I get up in the morning. That's why I take the insulin at night. So when I get up in the morning, my insulin is out of whack, and then during the day it's fine. So I've got a couple things that aren't like others. My feet don't have a lot of circulation in them, but there is feeling in them. But in the morning, it's the worst. It's when I get up, it's kind of like forcing my feet to want to actually walk across the room. And then after it's walked for a while, it's okay.
Neptune rules the feet. That Neptune moon, you can see that can be an indicator of the swelling of the feet. When you look at this Neptune moon, there can be all kinds of imbalances that are related to acid alkalinity balance, related to the lymph, related to fluids, relating to have, again, healthy regulation of fluids in the body. What else?
The dry skin. Since about 74. I was in a bad accident in 1974. I didn't tell you about that. But after that, I kind of I have really healthy bones. The only bones I've ever broken is I smashed my head into the steering wheel and smashed my nose up in 1974. And a couple years later, I broke a finger playing volleyball. So when the doctor gets into this osteoporosis things, it's like you can just about saw my bones off. But So I don't have problems with that.
Venus square the nodes, and the nodes being in the 5th, 11th, Aquarius, Leo, you can see the kidney issues that can create the skin issues, the toxicities in the skin. That's also, it could also, possibly be the Uranus and Saturn in Gemini in the 9th that could relate to stress that then, comes out through the skin as well. Okay, so that can come through there. How about this Mars in Cancer in the 10th? Anybody follow through? Mars in Cancer, again, that starts to bring in the whole lymph system again, the whole fluid systems that can get dehydrated, 10th house. Okay?
Well, yeah, and the ruler of Mars is,
The
the
moon.
moon, Neptune, new phase. So they're, in the first house. That's a lot, there's a lot of stuff there.
Right?
And it's also with the female organs, I would think, too, with the moon, Neptune, the Piscean influence of that, as well as the Cancer influence of that, and the brass
Right.
with the Cancer, correct?
Right.
And then,
I do have excess testosterone.
Testosterone.
Testosterone, yes. The doctor, when I had the cancer, wanted to get rid of some of it. And it's
Venus
like,
in Aries. Venus in Aries
yeah.
in the Scorpio house.
well, there's a semi-square with Mars and Uranus. I mean, not a semi-square, so a semi-square or 45, no, it's a semi-square, it's semi-sextile. Sorry, I'm wrong.
It's semi-square.
It is semi-square.
Yes.
So that would be another lung thing, I would think.
Yes.
Mars, Uranus, tension
Yep.
with that.
Yep. Sensitivities to fluids in the lungs, and especially now with this lymph system sensitive. So there's another thing to just really work with the whole lymphatic system, immune system. But I do see, some again, strong constitution when you look at Sun and Taurus in the 8th. They have the ability to regenerate themselves when they make their minds up. And so, I guess to me, I would say, working with this lymphatic and all this emotional stuff, I also can see brain stuff. Uranus in the 9th, Uranus in Gemini, left brain, right brain stuff, that whole switching stuff. So you said a family of bipolar. And
I am left and right-brained. I mean, I'm
Yes.
just as good on either one of them, so.
Yes.
And I'm ambidextrous, too, so.
yes. Okay, I lost my track with where I was going with that because I just saw the brain thing.
Uranus and Gemini.
Yeah, Uranus in Gemini. So what else was I? Bipolar. No, it was. I saw something before that, and then I saw the brain stuff and sidetracked. Sorry about that. I would say that on emotional levels, because of all this, these possibilities with circulation, with the lymphatics, with the fluids in the body, Sun in Taurus, in Scorpio, the more you can emotionally process and the more you can be fluid with your emotions, the more that's going to help that physical body.
And I'm very, I am not emotional about anything. I went through treatment for the alcoholism back in 1982, and that was my first step into getting at least intact with something emotional. It was like the counselor I had, and the only way I could figure out what was wrong, because when people hear my story, they think, oh, this is just awful, and it's like the things that people think are awful aren't awful to me, I mean, it's kind of very traumatic life, but, But so what he would do is he'd start talking to me, and I'd start talking, and then when I started crying, I knew what I was upset about. I cannot tell what I'm upset about when I'm upset. I'm more in tune to how you're feeling than how I'm feeling.
Well, maybe,
Moon in Aries in Libra, she learns emotionally through that reaction with other people.
well, I was also wondering if it's projection too. It's like
Yes.
what you think is what someone else is feeling is actually what you're feeling.
Well, the treatment was good just because they kind of teach you how to, they teach you some things about life that you just really didn't learn, you know.
They?
Oh, the people in the treatment center. They teach you that decisions, I used to make my decisions by throwing all the options in the hat and pulling one out, and then that was where I went. So now I kind of think about it and say, okay, this is better than this. So it's like that you don't come into this lifetime with a book.
Right. Hold your thoughts, hold your thoughts. Take